It's finally time that I show you the greenhouse. Let's go take a look. The very first thing you realize about the greenhouse is the fact that it is a hot and humid greenhouse. And right now I'm in the evening where it's 84 degrees Fahrenheit with about 85% humidity. Since it is summertime in Texas, this is a very, very hot greenhouse. That's why I have this greenhouse in the full shade right now. But once the winter months roll around, I'm gonna be putting this greenhouse back into the full sun. Now let's check out the first shelf up here. This first shelf is filled with carpet plants, including this Monte Carlo here. And Monte Carlo loves a good high light. That's why I put them at the top at the shelf. And as you can tell, they're growing in really nice, thick, and dense. Now over here, I've got some dwarf hairgrass. And this dwarf hairgrass was just planted about 2 weeks ago and is starting to take in nicely. Now over here, we've got some microsword. As you can tell, the microsword loves the soil, and this bin right here will need to be replanted within the next week. Microsword loves the highlight. You have to make sure it has a great humidity level, otherwise it'll start to burn. Moving on down here, we have some Marcella crenta, and I was really dangerously low with this Marcella crenta, but I was able to just pick out a few stems, that way I can propagate them here. Now this little tub over here has some Riccia fluitans, along with some scattered pieces of pearlweed that I've happened to get mixed in with the Riccia. Moving over to the next two tubs, we've got some Styrogorni repens, and as you can tell, we've got an older bin right here filled up with some more mature cuttings. These guys look amazing considering they just went through a giant move. Moving on to our next plant, we've got some dwarf hairgrass mini, and as you can tell, it needs to be repotted. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But let's move down to the second layer below. This layer mainly consists of medium to mid-ground plants, and of course some houseplants. Next, we have some Alternanthia recani, and these guys are getting a little too much sun. As you can tell, their leaves are starting to bleach a little bit. Next, we have some Alternanthia recani ossipus, and this is a neat cousin to Alternanthia recani. Now, as you can tell, we've got some flowers on these bad boys, so check them out. Next, in this tub, I've got some Hydroxyl vulgaris. Now, can you guess which plant is here in the middle of this tub? Leave your guess in the comment section down below. Now, this next plant is a plant strain that I actually personally discovered myself, and it is Persicaria sp yellowbush. And it is a great, striking dark red color when underneath submerged growth. Moving on over here, we've got some Hygrophila tiger, and this is a fairly new plant that I have not kept before, so I can't wait to see how well it grows, especially underwater, as I haven't grown it underwater yet. Moving on over here, we've got some great growth from this water sprite here, along with in this bin full of assorted mosses and Riccia fluitans. And as you can tell, they're really kind of taking over this soil. In this next tub, I've got some Hydroxyl vulgaris, and it is doing great since the move. Next, we've got some Glossostigma eliantoides over here, and it is recovering from the move, but is still looking great considering all of what has happened. Next, let's head over to the side of the shelf where I have a giant bin of Rotala rotundifolia red. And it is looking amazing considering it was without light for 2 weeks, as I had accidentally lost the tub in the middle of our boxes and the moving vans. So, it is starting to look amazing as it's coming back from the absolute darkness. Now moving on to the bottom level, I've got a lot of plants over here that have not done well since the move, and these are some of my last stems of these plants, like this Hygrophila polysterma sunset. Since sunset is such a hardy plant, I expect it to come back very soon. Next, we got some Bacopa monieri over here, and it is starting to bounce back as well. This little tub is my last bit of stargrass that I have left, and I'm hoping he comes out super strong. Now, moving on over to this next bin, this is some Bacopa salismani green, and this is the first time I've ever kept this plant, so I can't wait to get him into one of my submerged aquariums. Moving on over to here, we've got his cousin, Bacopa colorata carolina, and it is a beautiful Bacopa, and as you can tell, it is starting to flower, which means it is doing super duper well. Now over here, we have the mother of all bins of Alternanthia recani, and these guys are going to be moved to the shade shortly, because they're starting to experience a little bit of sun stain, but these guys will recover really fast as soon as I get some shade over them. These guys will bounce back in no time, and they just look amazing. Now moving on over here, here's a tip and trick that I like to use for my houseplants, is I take a clear plastic tub and I fill it with about 3 to 4 inches of aquarium water. The dirtier, the better, as that has a bunch of jam-packed nutrients that these guys love. Now moving over to here, we've got some Almania singularis that had taken a very big toll in my move. So with some new stems, I'm getting these guys to be growing back to where they need to be. Now let's move over to the other side of the greenhouse. Moving over to the other side of the greenhouse, I've got one of the first of many breeding setups that I have, and this little one right here is going to house some tiger antlers soon. Now as you can tell, I've got some houseplants growing over the surface to give more structure, and it's filled up with Salvina minima, which will give a great place for the fry to hide, lower the temperatures, and remove any excess nutrients. Now over here in the future, I'm going to be adding a lot more of those breeding ponds. Now let's move on towards the front of the greenhouse, and over here I'm using the exact same method for my houseplants as I am for these bins of a Hygrophila brown that are growing immersed. These guys are bouncing back after a rough move, but they'll be back in no time. Now, coming on to the first rack of this shelf, we've got some Limnophilia aromatica in its immersed form. This has to be one of my favorite aquarium plants of all time, as it has that really nice deep purple with some amazing color waves. Moving on from the Limnophilia, let's head over to the main tub of dwarf hairgrass. And over here, it will need to be replanted pretty soon, but it's grown in very nice and thick. Now over here, we've got some more Monte Carlo, just growing in and looking awesome. Now moving on from the Monte Carlo, let's head over to this little tub where I've got some AR variegated, and we've got some Rotala Florida in the corner over here. Now moving on over here, we've got some Ranunculus inundatus, which, forgive me if I mispronounce it, is a brand new plant species that I've never kept before, so I'm really curious to see on how it does. Now as for the top rack, let's go back over here to this side of the shelf where I've got another immersed bin filled with Rotala OJ. I feel like Rotala OJ is one of the most underrated aquarium plants on the market. Would you agree? Either way, I still find it very, very pretty. It looks awesome with its great orange leaves underwater. Now moving on from the Rotala OJ, we're going to move on to our second level. Now over here, I've got some Lindnerria rotundifolia, another plant that I've just started to keep, and it is looking amazing. I can't wait to grow some of it underwater into my new aquariums. Now moving over to this bin, we've got some Pogostemon stellus octopus, hands down one of my favorite aquarium plants since it is super duper easy to grow both out of the water and in the water. To finish off the shelf, we've got some more houseplants sitting over here in some containers, and moving on over to this side, I've also got some room for some more of these fish breeding setups. Do you see along this level right here on the alongside the wall? That's where we'll be putting a whole bunch of these ponds. Now comment down below what type of fish I should breed. Now over here is one of the biggest things that I need in this greenhouse is the fact that I have some pond water. And this pond water is very nutrient rich, chlorine free, and it's great for my aquatic plants. Since they're aquatic plants, they need high levels of humidity, and to fill up their bins with about 1.5 inches of water tops that off perfectly. And as you can tell, these plants really are starting to love it. It's like plant steroids. Now leaving a few inches at the bottom remains it and keeps that humidity level, which is what we desire. So I'm going to teach you how I plant these tubs. So starting off, I've got some of my special dirt mixed in with one of my tubs, and we've got some water on it already. Next, I'm going to take some of the dwarf hairgrass mini, and I'm going to transplant it over to here. And there you have it, we've got the bin all planted. Let's go ahead and hit it with some water. And there you have it, we're ready. Let's go put it on the shelf. And that has been a tour of my greenhouse. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend checking out this one right here. I can't wait to see you in that video.